Hello, you guys. Hello. How is everybody? First of all, the title of this live chat is a mouthful. It's a mouthful, but I definitely find it very fitting to wrap this all in together because they're all kind of like interconnected. They're in the same similar category here. So I figure we could kind of like address them all together. Now, I've already made content on this channel talking about these topics in one way or another. I mean, this is what we're talking about, whether we're specifically like spelling this out or not, right? It's interesting. So this is going to be fun for me. I'm like, where am I even going to start with this? Where am I even going to start? But what I'll say right off the rip is no understanding these items or these topics can help you immensely in all parts of your life. I'll just say that right off the rip. As a matter of fact, back when I was in college, as a prerequisite, I had to take this psychology class about perspectives, and I was a business major, you know. So of course, in business, when you're trying to sell something, or I'll just make it even more simplified. In business, you're still what? You're still dealing with human beings. So as long as you're dealing with, a vessel that has a mind, is it's going to be definitely to your advantage to understand the psychology of projections, perceptions, observations, perspectives, and learning about what bias and unbiased is, outlooks, all of these things, you guys. And on this channel, we talk a lot about relationships, especially the dark sided natures of them, abusive relationships and trauma. And when we get into those type of areas, this stuff is even more heavier and very interesting, I might add. I'm like pretty fascinated with the human mind, generally speaking, which is why I have the channel. But let's just go ahead and get into this. I hope everybody is well, by the way. And if you like content like this, definitely hit the like button. Feel welcome to subscribe. We're psychology junkies around here, and we just like talking about increasing our emotional maturities and, becoming better versions of ourselves. Not perfect ones, because that's going to be an impossible feat here as we're mere humans, but, getting better, of course. All right. So I guess we could start out with projection, the psychology of projection, since I led my title with that. So projection, when I looked this definition up, it just basically simply said unconsciously taking unwanted emotions or traits you don't like about yourself and attributing them to someone else. Now, I want to expand upon that definition because I don't want to limit it to just unwanted. So I will say unconsciously taking wanted and unwanted emotions or traits you like or don't like about yourself and attributing them to someone else. And the only reason why I'm going to say this is number one, I'm a parent. That's like a prime example of the wanted and the things you do like about yourself. Projecting your positive qualities onto your child, projecting, trying to live vicariously through someone else. I'm just, a parent child relationship is a good way to explain this, but we could do this with a niece, a nephew, family, friend, or anybody who may be doing something that we like or that's positive, a goal that we have reached or haven't reached, we're projecting onto them. Like someone can project that you're happy because I'm happy. So I wouldn't limit projection to just the unwanted. But of course, the most popular way that we use projection is negative. But I've found a lot with human, because we cannot be unbiased. And sidebar, I know that we're going to talk more about that unbiased stuff at the end, but I know there are people who believe that we can be unbiased, and that's laughable to me based off of just even the definition of what a bias is. Like, how can we be 100% unbiased? How? How? But back to projection for now. And excuse me if I'm jumping around. Hopefully you guys are just following me with this. But yeah, we can human beings guys to not be so one dimensional and have tunnel vision for things, because often there's minimally, there's going to be the two sides of the coin, you know, and then in other situations, even more angles. Saying no or rejection is not all negative. A closed door is not all negative. Losing sometimes is not, that can actually be the win. So these things on this channel are things that I always encourage people to expand their minds upon when they're perceiving things. I've had to do a lot of work with this because I'm a human being too, you know, but some people will struggle with this more than others. Okay, because things get imprinted on us, and we know this here on the channel through, the inner childhood wounds and the traumas. And the good thing about it is, though, once we start doing the purge that I always talk about and cleansing ourselves, we can, you know, be more healthier in these, in the way that we're perceiving things and the perspectives that we hold, and how we're able to make an observation even, you know. And while we're talking about observations, observations are basically based off of what we see, what we hear, and what we notice. But if our ears aren't really open, if we don't know what we should be looking for, if we're not noticing the right things, are we making the right observations? You know? So then it's like, okay, well, you made a poor observation because you weren't seeing, hearing, and noticing in a healthier manner. I'm not going to say it's all wrong, is maybe, just figuring what's anchoring those observations. And I'm going to use this word anchoring probably a lot in this conversation. And it's just another fancy way of saying what is rooted. What is anchoring is just going to be the best word. Like, just think of somebody running a 4x4 relay on a track, and they're passing that baton, and those four runners, and the person who's doing the home stretch, like what is anchoring it in those four stages? What is at the root of how you're making these observations? And that's going to depend on how you're seeing things. For instance, someone who may have had a lot of negative experiences in life may be more prone to being a pessimistic type of person. Their outlook, which is, a person's point of view or general outlook of something, is going to be based off of a lot of times what someone experiences. And that's where this word bias will come in, right? And what is a bias? When I look this definition up, it says it's influenced by our background, our personal experiences, societal stereotypes, and cultural contexts. All right. And this forms some type of temperament and outlook on how we view the world. So, can a person truly ever disconnect 100% from their background, from their personal experiences? Just those two things. Now, societal stereotypes and cultural contexts, yes, those can become embedded too. But what if you move to a different society? I would say still those original society imprints, from especially during those primitive years, like in the first 5 years and whatnot, you're still going to have some of that in you. Like a lot of people right now in their adulthood are still trying to work through or understand, either subconsciously or unconsciously, things that they've gone through in their earlier years. And they don't even realize it. Like, man, I married my dad. Stuff like that. Stuff like that. And I would also, I'm a deep thinker. I am a deep thinker here. And I think about the conscious and the subconscious. So it's like, as long as we have a subconscious, can we be unbiased? That's something else I would think about. If I were like on a debate team and I had to argue why we cannot be unbiased. To me, I don't even know why it's an argument. You guys can let me know down in the comment. This is a judgment-free zone, of course. But my thoughts and my observations are just so that would definitely be a really good question. But having the awareness of where we might be going wrong when we're projecting or, building a us, then go back to the drawing board and try to work on those areas so that we can make better decisions. Because ultimately, that's why I would make a video like this. Like, okay, we can take all this information for food for thought here, but ultimately the end goal of even addressing these type of areas would be so that we can become better decision makers, right? Or at least that's what I would offer for you to consider. And why would you care about this stuff, right? So perceptions, you guys, is basically an awareness through senses, an awareness through senses. But this becomes tricky then, if you think about it. What if we're not so in touch with our senses? What if we have five senses? What if something is off with our senses? You know, and then we can go back to the word anchoring again. What's anchoring our senses? And then therefore it's anchoring our perceptions, if that makes sense. The best thing that I can talk about here are the trauma bonds and what that does to a person's senses. It really makes them out of whack. But this out of whackness is really supposed to be getting your attention, because generally speaking, when you're out of whack, you want to, get yourself from being unregulated to being regulated. But the problem is, with the trauma bond is it becomes so embedded in your psyche, this pathway and this experience that you've been having with the person, that it becomes a normal to you, and not being the trauma bond actually will feel weird. So it's like training yourself to be more comfortable in toxicity than not than not. But then at that point, now our perceptions and our observations and our perspectives are just all out of whack, because what is our perspective? It's our attitude towards, or a way of regarding something, an attitude. So if someone says, hey, keep the right perspective, they're basically telling you to keep the right attitude about something. But how can you keep that right attitude if, again, we're talking about what is it rooted in? Where are these things being rooted from? Is it, coming from self-love? Is it coming from proper boundaries? Is it coming from a mind that's not experiencing PTSD at this time? All right, that's post-traumatic stress syndromes. So I would say, generally speaking, we see things as we are, and that's another reason why being unbiased is very tricky. And then, there's that word about seeing and having the correct lenses. And that's why, we talk about the rosy colored glasses, you know, idealizing things, romanticizing stuff. And remember that movie with, I believe it was Morgan Freeman. And I'm sorry to not remember the other main actor who did an amazing job. Was it the Shawshank Redemption? Something like that. Two guys went to prison, and the other guy, he was like great at taxes and all this good stuff. But either way, they are very two intellectuals, obvious, very intelligent guys. And the one guy, what's his name? Andy? Yeah. He um he knew a lot about psychology, that one. I'll just say that. If you haven't seen the movie, it's a great movie. Came out, it's ages ago, but it's a classic. He They were both serving maybe life. I don't know if it was life, but it was very long sentences either way. And he came up with a plan to get out of prison. And he did a similar routine every day. He gained the trust of the staff by doing their taxes, because I believe he was a really good accountant when he was, a free man. And he did this for years and years and years. And little by little, he was digging a hole in his jail cell to maybe go out through a septic tank of some sort. But nonetheless, he was stealing little things. He stole like a pair of dress shoes from the prison warden, I believe. Like, he was getting everything he needed um, to escape. He had a change of clothes, and little things went missing, but no one knew the less. And he literally, the day that he was free, he walked out in those dressy prison shoes. And no one thought anything of it, because for decades, or at least I believe at least for over the span of 10 years, every day he made the same walk. And some would argue that the people were kind of seeing what they were used to seeing. And that can be, some people will be triggered because they were like, wait, they'll catch it right away depending on where their sight is. Like, oh, wait, I go past this every day and I notice that slight change. And then someone else who may not be looking as hard and they're working out of their subconscious, whereas the other person was out working out of their consciousness, they see, they're not even checking for it, or they're still seeing things as though they've seen it for how many days out of those 10 years? This is a lot of days. This is a lot of days of seeing the same thing. So it just goes to show where if we see something over and over and over and over, it may become more challenging for us to see the difference of it, depending on if we're operating out of our subconsciousness or our consciousness. Isn't that crazy? Like, he had on shiny ass dress shoes and he walked straight out in them to, get back to his cell with them. And nobody knew the difference. He was walking into the courtyard, shaking dirt out of his pants little by little, because he couldn't keep a mountain of rock pebbles in his jail cell. So it took a lot of patience for him to do this and get rid of the evidence, each day when they had their recess time in the yard. But a lot of psychological things were definitely going on in that movie. But yeah, I just thought that was just an interesting thing to point out here. So, our deceptions, our illusions and delusions, if we have enough self-awareness to know, to be, have honest moments with ourselves, to know, like, where have I been deceiving myself, or where where am I susceptible to deceptions and illusions and delusions, then we could actually be more mindful and making perceptions and perspectives and making more proper observations and outlooks. Because what happens is when we go back to the projection, our observations are then actually stemming from projections, you know, because we're observing things as we are. So if you're primarily this traumatized person, you know, everything that you're doing is, again, it's anchoring out of this. And that's why it's so important, you guys, to find the healing. It's so important. This is why, because it's like, wow, it's then it becomes, and I think I was talking about this in one of my lives over the weekend on this channel, where I was discussing the healing process, and I was talking about how the emotions start coming in when your eyes are unblinded, because you start seeing things that you did not realize before. You know, imagine somebody being later in life, realizing how much self delusion there was. Like, whoa. And then people could have tried to even tell this person, but people don't see what they don't want to see. It could be like a psychological block. And I kind of, with the projecting, I see it as some type of psychological dumping. Like, I'm trying to psychologically dump this on someone. You're not really doing it. I mean, you're doing it in the moment, but it's still with you. So even then, maybe we can call this psychologically sharing, because you're not truly yet, you're projecting it onto them, but it's still with you, you know. So in that way, it's more like you're psychologically sharing it at that point, and you're trying to dump it, you know, but it's still with you. Best believe projecting it onto the other person did not change its status with you. And it actually doesn't change the status with that person unless they take that invitation, you know. And this is someone who's emotionally immature. Um, and children are emotionally immature. So we have to be careful with the projecting at that point if we want to think about it in that way, you know. You projecting, like, let's think about this in a negative way. Are you just like your dad? Da, 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 da. You know, this children's minds don't even finish developing until they're in their 20s. Okay, so all of these seeds that we're planting in them, and if you're saying this repeatedly, you're making an imprint with someone. And, you know, that's socially, or psych is socially reckless, yes, because you're creating damage in someone that, you know, hopefully they'll have the self-awareness one day to be able to, you know, make this observation, and they're going to have to cleanse this out of their selves. But these are things that are happen when imperfect people are raising other imperfect people. You know, parents aren't perfect, and if they haven't dealt with their stuff, of course, you know, there's a greater chance of them just even passing it through the DNA. You know, because I read a study about the state that you're in when you conceive your child. You're like energetically putting that into your child. That's why it's best if you're not like, just, you know, I blacked out and had sex, you know, with someone and conceived. Like, it's great if you can actually, in the most healthiest sense, I'm with my husband, I'm with my wife, and we're being intentional about this, and we're setting an intention on this seed that we're trying to, you know, put into my womb. We're putting all this beautiful energy around it, you know, that actually it matters. It matters. Whereas, you know, unplanned pregnancies, just two people hooking up off of their flesh, there's no love there, toxicity. You know, imagine the energy that you are already just starting that seed out with. That child is going to, you know, grow into be a human being, of course. But yeah, it's just something to think about for those of you who may be considering starting a family at some point, or have additional children at some point. or never even had it, that's even better. Like you're getting this information now where you can actually think about it. And this is a good way to actually change some of those generational curses in a family where things are going this way, like really setting those positive intentions, coming together with someone who is you know, on the light side. Doesn't mean that they don't have a dark side, because we all have a light and a dark side, you know, and that actually trickles into all of this talk as well about what's anchoring, you know, about what's anchoring things. Because in psychology, we are most invested in seeing what we want things to be, you know? Like if someone says, during my research, it looked like this. So where was your mind during the research? And what were you looking for? What did you want to look for, you know? So if you could get yourself to a point where it's, you know what, I really want to look for the truth of things as best as I can, and then someone could say as unbiased as I can be, because like I don't believe, like I said, it could be completely unbiased. But the good thing about that is the more that you've dealt with yourself, the more balanced you can be, and being able to have these, like I said, these healthy perceptions and perspectives and observations and outlooks and all of that, right? And then going back to what I just said about during like the time of your research, it looked like this. At that time, where was your mind versus now? So it's like, when we get out of the narcissistic relationship, I'll just compare it to that. And we think about when we first met that narcissist and the research we did at that time based off of now. But then you'll say, well, you know what? I've gathered a lot of information between then and now. But if I were to just strip it down to what was presented to me in the beginning part before, how would I view that now? If that makes sense, you know? And because we can't be completely unbiased because we have gathered all that other information, but even if, we try our best to strip it down to what we were presented with before. So that's why, dealing with yourself first and being in as balanced as you can be, not perfect, but balanced, it really makes a difference. It really makes a difference, you guys. So let's see, yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm going to stop there for this first conversation. We're a half an hour in, and I know we all have things to do. But if you would like for me to talk more about this, let me know down in the comment section. I enjoy these types of conversations, and hopefully it gives someone something to think about. I want you guys ultimately to make better decisions, and that means being able to have a certain level of perceptions and perspectives and observations that are more rooted in being present and rooted on facts versus emotions, you know, and then being more rooted on the full picture. You may be just focused on one thing, and maybe you'll have to train yourself to look at an array of things, you know, because sometimes when we go through an experience, it'll make us a guard dog about one thing, and then oops, we weren't paying attention to that. And that's why I say it's really hard for us to not be unbiased, because mentally it's like, okay, well, I don't want to go through that again. But now you're going through something else because you were too focused on, not wanting to go through that again. And then one would beg to say, well, how traumatized were you from going through that? And are you projecting that onto this situation? Are you looking for it when it's not even there? because you have this fear. And I didn't mention fear a lot in this conversation, but of course, fear can be rooted into, I'm so afraid of this happening that I'm almost consciously and subconsciously seeing it where I'm not. And this is called paranoia. This is called paranoia. People that suffer from paranoia, either they got traumatized from something or they just have such a large fear of it that they're seeing it. This reminds me of someone I know that has schizophrenia, and someone could just glance in their direction. People are looking at me. People are always looking at me. Or, then because there's this fear of people hating them or not liking them because they're projecting their own um, low self-esteem onto the rest of society. Like, people are looking at me. They, they think I'm ugly, or they're trying to fight me, or, I've noticed that, and it's sad, and you could try to work through this, but some things be so embedded when you have certain type of elements like schizophrenia. It's hard to get that person to see. It can be very challenging, and then that puts someone like in a mental jail cell, honestly, and they're just trying to work through this mental jail cell, that they're feeling. But meanwhile, it's a lot of projecting. They don't realize, like, buddy, actually, people are looking at you because you're handsome. The person with schizophrenia can be very attractive, or they're looking at you because you're very tall, actually. Like, you don't know why they're looking. Or they're actually just being friendly with you. They're not like inviting this negativity that you're actually projecting into the situation. And that's why, mental health is just interesting, and someone can just be dead set on. They just know that something is A when it's really B. And it's like, whoa. And it could be so entrenched inside of a person that you can't tell them anything different. And those are very tricky situations, because if they're running off of something that's not even the facts, that's not even what it is, they're making decisions based off of that. And that's how a lot of sticky situations can be happening in this world, you know? And that's why mental illness really needs to be addressed. It really needs to be addressed. But I'm going to hop off of here. It was so great to stop in and, have this conversation with you guys. I had some free time. And, when I have my free time, I like to jump on and just talk about what's on my mind. You know, Honestly, I was listening to someone give their speech, and this was for the finance world. Because in my waking life, yes, I am a life coach. You see down there, www.lakiacrawford.com. I do give life coach services to people and help them through psychological things. And then also in my waking life, though, I work heavily in the financial world. So, see, these things trickle in, like I said in the beginning of my talk with you. But yeah, I love you guys. Continue to invest in yourself and never give up on yourself, of course. And I will definitely see you guys hopefully in the next live chat. If you are subscribed, look at the bell, because I don't really have a set schedule on here, although obviously I'm checking in with you guys pretty frequently. It could be at different times, which is great, because I talk to people I know people from all different time zones watch this channel anyway. And YouTube will always record this and re-upload it if you miss it real time. So it's not a big deal. But if you hit the bell and you're able to sneak in, put an earbud in at work, it's like a podcast type feel when I come and do these live chats. You're always welcome to chime in. I do read my comments. If you have questions and concerns and you cannot book a private session with me, joining in the live chats is the next best thing, you know? And you can always email me, coachlakia@gmail.com, if you want to tell me anything in private as well. All right. All right, you guys. With that being said, stay well, take care, enjoy the rest of your day, of course, and I will see you guys in the next live chat.